Good morning, students. In this class, we are going to see the lesson, the letter A, written by Mr. Christy Brown. Imagine, students, how could a person do something without having control over his hands and legs properly? Herewith, we are going to see a person who could control his left foot alone. Let's see. Unit 2, Lesson 3. See these persons, students. They are physically challenged or differently abled, in other word. This unit is titled as differently abled, which means physically challenged or handicapped. These persons, though they do not have a, a full control over their body, they have lost something, either the limbs or the hands, but they tried to achieve something in their life. Such a person, Mr. Christy Brown. Before jumping into the lesson, we shall see some of the disabilities with their description. Cerebral palsy. It is a condition caused by damage to a baby's brain before or during its birth, which makes its limbs and muscles permanently weak. The next one, dyslexia. It is a developmental disorder in which a person is unable to read or write letters and numbers properly. Next one is autism. It is a developmental disorder that can cause someone to have difficulty in communicating with other people and responding to them. The next one is hearing impairment. It is a condition where a person is unable to hear clearly. And the last one is polio, an infectious disease caused by a virus, which often makes people unable to use their legs. Okay, Braille system. Braille system is a system of printing and writing for the blind, in which characters are formed by patterns of raised dots which are filled with fingers. Look at the Braille table for English to see how a sentence in English is written in Braille. Okay, uh, it is a alphabet system created by Mr. Louis Braille. Okay, here with the letters are given, and also their symbols also given, the Braille symbols. Okay, the numbers also given, the um, symbols also there, and we could see the Braille system symbols for each of them. See here a sentence. I like to read books. It is given in Braille. I. There are two dots. Okay, here we could see the letter I. Okay, and like in that first letter L. L is marked with three dots. Okay, so like that, these are raised dots so that the blind people they can move their fingertips over these raised dots and they would identify what is written in the book. Okay, let's move. The letter A by Christy Brown. Let's see some pictures of Mr. Christy Brown. In these pictures, you could see he has control over his left foot alone. He was affected by cerebral palsy. Okay, we had already seen what is cerebral palsy. So, during his birth or before his birth, some of the part of his brain was damaged. Due to that, he had lost control over his other organs. He couldn't speak. Okay, the only part which would work in his body is his left foot alone. So, with the help of that left foot alone, he had made several achievements. Let's see. Christy Brown was an Irish writer and painter, having control of only his left foot. Brown achieved international recognition and acclaim with his books My Left Foot, Down All the Days, and A Shadow on Summer. In 1989, the Oscar winning film My Left Foot, starring Daniel Day Lewis, was made on his life. This lesson is an extract from his autobiography, My Left Foot, which was made into a film and had won Academy Award in the year 1989. The book autobiography won the Academy Award and the film made on his life, My Left Foot, won Oscar Award. Before seeing what is an autobiography, we have to see what is a biography is. A biography, or simply bio, is a detailed description of a person's life. It involves more than just the basic facts like education, work, relationships, and deaths. It portrays a person's experience of these life events, works in diverse media, from literature to film, form the genre known as biography. Generally, biography will be written by somebody else about another person's life. But an autobiography is the story of a person's life written by the same person. Okay. see this alphabet A, what comes to your mind? It is the first alphabet in English. Okay, so the person who wanted to learn the language English, he will learn this letter A. That is the first alphabet. Okay, A is the first alphabet in English. So, more significance lies behind that. In Egypt, it means the beginning. The Greek alpha also marks the beginning of all things. Okay, let's go deep into the lesson. At this time, my mother had five other children to look after besides the difficult one. So, there are five other children in Christy Brown's family. He mentioned as a difficult one himself. Why? Though as yet it was not by any means a full house. They were my brothers, Jim, Tony, and Paddy, and my two sisters, Lily and Mona. All of them very young, just a year or so between each of them, so that they were almost exactly like steps of star. Okay, so all those five other siblings of Mr. Christy Brown, they would look like the steps of star. Okay, so either 1 year gap between their ages. Okay, so they would be looking like the steps of stars. Okay, so from this we could identify that the lesson opens with a note about his siblings. They were his brothers Jim, Tony, and Paddy, and two other sisters named Lily and Mona. Okay, 4 years rolled by, and I was now five and still as helpless as a newly born baby. Okay, so up to that for years, 4 years, he couldn't do anything of his own. Okay, he was helpless as a newly born baby. While my father was out at bricklaying, earning out bread and butter for us, mother was slowly, patiently pulling down the wall brick by brick. Here, we could see his father was a bricklayer. Okay, bricklayer. Who is a bricklayer? He who would build walls using the bricks. But this has some other extra meaning than the word mason. Okay, and the mother was slowly, patiently pulling down the wall brick by brick that seemed to thrust itself between me and other children. Okay, so what is that? Being a child of 4 years of age, Christy Brown couldn't do anything of his own. So that seems to be a wall or a thick curtain between himself and his other siblings. Okay, he was not like others. Okay, but the mother was struggling a lot to break the wall between himself and his other siblings, because for a mother all children are equal. Okay, let's move. Slowly, patiently penetrating beyond the thick curtains that hung over my mind, separating it from theirs. Okay, so that was a like a thick curtain or a wall. Okay, so this is a metaphor. The narrator's silence and inability to communicate with others have been compared to a solid wall and a thick curtain. Both are hard to penetrate. Okay, it was heartbreaking work, for often she got from me in return was a vague smile and perhaps a faint gurgle. Okay, so for her hard work to bridge the gap between himself and his siblings, in return, she could get from him was a vague smile, okay, or perhaps a faint gurgle, the noise from his throat. Okay, that's it. I could not speak or even mumble, nor could I sit up without support on my own. Okay, so he couldn't speak or even mumble in the sense murmur. Okay, he couldn't make even a murmur sound. Okay, couldn't sit up without any support. Okay, and but I wasn't inert or motionless. Okay, but even though he was not a motionless boy, okay, and I seemed indeed to be convulsed with movements. Clear? Okay. Wild, stiff, snake like movement that never left me except in sleep. So he could do some movements, the snake like movement or bending, like that. He could move, but only in his sleep he could not move anything. Okay. My fingers twisted and twitched continually. My arms twined backwards and would often shoot out suddenly this way and that way, and my head lolled and sagged sideways. I was a cute, crooked little fellow. So this was his condition. Okay, his arms uh, twined backwards, clear, and his fingers were twisted and twitched continually. Okay, so even he couldn't have control over his head. His head lolled and sagged sideways. Okay, my mother tells me how one day she had been sitting with me for hours in an upstairs bedroom, showing me pictures out of a great big storybook that I had got from Santa Claus last Christmas, and telling me the names of the different animals. Okay, so his mother, she had shown a book which he got from Santa Claus last Christmas, and she was showing him animals, pictures, and flowers, like that. Okay, and flowers that were in them, trying without success to get me to repeat them. Okay, so as he couldn't speak, he could not repeat what she was saying. This had gone on for hours while she talked and laughed with me. Okay, that thing happened for hours. Okay, then at the end of it, she leaned over me and said gently into my ear. Okay, so as he couldn't speak, his mother wanted him to nod his head at least. Okay, so she said, "Did you like it, Chris? Did you like the birds and the monkeys and all the lovely flowers? Nod your head for yes, like a good boy." Okay, this is a small expectation. Okay, he couldn't speak. She knew well, but at least he could nod his head. Okay, that was the smallest expectation of the mother. But what happened? But I could make no sign that I had understood her. Okay, he did not make any such kind of action. He uh, did not make any sort of sign. His, her face was bent over mine, hopefully. Suddenly, involuntarily, my cured hand reached up and grasped one of the dark curls that fell in a thick cluster about her neck. Okay, so he couldn't make any sign of understanding, but as she was bent over him, okay, his hands reached up and caught hold of the hair of his mother. Gently, she loosened the clenched fingers, though some dark strands were still clutched between them. Okay, she had loosened his fingers. Okay, from the hair, and what happened next? Then she turned away from my curious stare and left the room crying, as she did not get any sort of good sign from him. His mother turned away and she left the room by crying. Okay, that was a pathetic situation. Okay, the door closed behind her. It all seemed hopeless. It looked as though there were some justification for my relatives. Okay, contention that I was an idiot and beyond help. So By seeing the condition of Christy Brown, some of the relatives of them had advised her that there was an institution which would take care of such kind of person. Okay, they thought that he was almost uh, couldn't do anything. Okay, he will not do anything. He had no growth in his brain. Okay, so such kind of persons should be taken care. Okay, and there was an institution in which would take care of such kind of persons. Okay, they had suggested her, but what happened? Never, said my mother almost fiercely when this was suggested to her. I know my boy is not an idiot. It is his body that is shattered, not his mind. I'm sure of that. This is the strong belief of Christie's mother that only his body is out of control, not his mind. He was mentally perfect. That was the belief of the mother. Sure, yet inwardly she prayed God would give her some proof of her faith. She knew it was one thing to believe, but quite another thing to prove. Okay, so he had, she had the strong faith, and she had said to their relatives that he was mentally perfect, but there was no proof for that idea. Okay, so she had prayed God. Okay, definitely, the God will would show some mercy on her, and there will be some proof for her faith. Okay, so from these, we could understand that the relatives had suggested an institution which would take care of such kind of children with disabilities, and his mother was not interested in that, and she had much confidence in him. Okay, I was now 5, and still I showed no real sign of intelligence. I showed no apparent interest in things except with my toes, more especially those of my left foot. Okay, so there was no real sign of intelligence. Okay, and he could move only his left foot. Okay, although my natural habits were clean, I could not aid myself, but in this respect, my father took care of me. So his habits were clean, so his father helped him a lot in this respect. I used to lie on my back all the time in the kitchen or on bright warm days out in the garden like a little bundle of a crooked muzzle. and twisted nerves, surrounded by a family that loved me and made me part of their own warmth and humanity. Okay, so either he would be in the garden or in the kitchen, supported by something. Okay, but he was loved by a family. Okay, and which made him a part of their own warmth and humanity. Okay, I was lonely, imprisoned in a world of my own, unable to communicate with others, cut off, separated from them, as though a glass wall stood between my existence and theirs, thrusting me beyond the sphere of their lives and activities. I longed to run about and play with the rest, but I was unable to break the loose from my bondage. How pathetic the situation. Okay. He felt lonely. He was imprisoned in his own world. Okay. So he couldn't communicate with others, so because of that he couldn't say anything what he had imagined, what he was thinking. He couldn't communicate to others. Okay, everything were with him alone. He was separated from others. Okay, and it seems that a glass wall stood between himself and his siblings. Okay, he wanted to run and play with his siblings, but was unable to do that because of the bondage. Okay, that bondage did not allow him to run and play with the rest in his family. Then suddenly it happened. In a moment, everything was changed. My future life molded into a definite shape. My mother's faith in me rewarded, and her secret fear changed into open triumph. Okay, here he says about the moment in which everything were changed. Okay, his future life molded into a definite shape, and his mother's faith was rewarded, and her secret fear was changed into a open triumph. What was that moment? Let's continue. It happened so quickly, so simply, after all the years of waiting and uncertainty, that I can see and the feel the whole scene as if it had happened last week. Okay, so that moment was seems to happened just last week. Okay, it was the afternoon of a cold gray December day. Okay, the streets outside glistened with snow. The white sparkling flakes stuck and melted on the window panes and hung on the boughs of trees like molten silver. Okay, so the climate outside was very chill. It was a chill weather. Okay, there was a snowfall. and the flakes of snow were melted on the window panes, and also they hung on the branches of the trees like a molten silver. The wind howled dismally, whipping up little whirling columns of snow that rose and fell at every fresh gust. And overall, the dull, murky sky stretched like a dark canopy, a vast infinity of grayness. Okay, here with we could see how the snow was snowflakes were melted and on the window panes. Okay, and the climate outside was a very cool climate. There was a snowfall. Okay, and the murky sky stretched like a dark canopy. Okay, the sky was gray. It was looking like a canopy. Okay, a canopy, uh, yeah, vast infinity of grayness. Okay, it was looking like a very big canopy. Okay, what do you mean by canopy? Canopy is the small coverage over any stall or any ticket counter, like that. We could see the canopy. Okay, so here he says that the a gray sky was looking like a very big canopy over the sky. Okay, inside, all the family were gathered around the big kitchen fire that lit up the little room with a warm glow and made giant shadows dance on the walls and ceiling. Okay, in foreign countries, yeah, particularly in Europe countries, we could see such kind of fire. Okay, to make the room very warm, they would have the fire in a fireplace, and there would be a chimney to let the smoke out. Okay, and such kind of a the fireplace was there, and from that fireplace, from the fire, out of that, there was giant shadows, because as we are crossing the fire, the it will be looking like uh, yeah, giant shadows will be seen on the walls and ceiling. Okay, so here the time and weather outside is described in detail, and also the description of the place of the incident is given in detail. Okay, let's move. In a corner, Mona and Paddy were sitting huddled together, a few torn school primers before them. Okay, so Mona and Paddy were sitting side by side. Okay, and there were some school books, primary school books, were there in front of them. Okay, and they were writing down little sums onto an old chipped slate using a bright piece of yellow chalk. Okay, they were writing some sort of a little sums. Okay, in the slate, we using a bright piece of yellow chalk. I was close to them, propped up by a few pillows against the wall watching. Okay, so Christy Brown was sitting there with the support of some pillows, and he was watching the others who were writing their homeworks. It was the chalk that attracted me so much. Okay, the chalk attracted him so much. It was a long, slender stick of vivid yellow. Okay, so this is a description about that yellow chalk. I had never seen anything like it before, and it showed up so well against the black surface of the slate that I was fascinated by it as much as if it had been a stick of gold. Okay, so Christy Brown did not see anything like that before, so that yellow chalk attracted him so much. He was fascinated by the yellow chalk as it was a stick of gold. Okay. Suddenly, I wanted desperately to do what my sister was doing. Okay. So immediately he wanted to uh, do what his sister was doing. What she was doing, she was writing on a slate. So he also wanted to write the same thing. Okay, that kind of idea came to his mind. Okay, then without thinking or knowing exactly what I was doing, I reached out and took the stick of yellow chalk out of my sister's hand with my left foot. That is what happened. Okay, all of a sudden, he moved his left foot and caught the yellow chalk from the hand of his sister. Okay, and took the stick of yellow chalk out of his sister's hand using his left foot. Okay, that is what happened. Yes. I do not know why I used my left foot to do this. It is a puzzle to many people as well as to myself, for although I had displayed a curious interest in my toes at an early age. Okay, so he did not know why he had used his left foot, but from his early age itself, he displayed a curious interest in my toes. Okay, he could move them. Okay, and I had never attempted before this to use either of my feet in any way. Okay, so even then he couldn't know that he had some control over his left foot. Okay, he did not do any movement like that, but all of a sudden it happened. They could have been as useless to me as were my hands. That day, however, my left foot, apparently by its own volition, reached out and very impolitely took the chalk out of my sister's hand. Okay, that was the a very mysterious thing happened in his life. Okay, he before that he thought that his foot also were useless like his hands, but that surprise happened. That thing happened all of a sudden. Okay, that day, however, his left foot reached out and very impolitely took the chalk out of his sister's hand. Okay. I held it tightly between my toes and, acting on an impulse, made a wild sort of scribble with it on the slate. Okay, so he couldn't do, couldn't know what to do with the yellow chalk. So what he did, he had made a wild sort of scribble over the slate. Okay. Next moment, I stopped, a bit dazed, surprised, looking down at the stick of that yellow chalk stuck between my toes, not knowing what to do it, what to do with it next. Okay. Um, so did not know what to do with the yellow chalk, hardly knowing how it got there. Then I looked up and became aware that everyone had stopped talking and was staring at me silently. Okay. Then only he had looked up that everyone in his family, they had stopped their work and they were staring at him silently. Okay. Nobody stared. Mona, her black curls framing her chubby little face, stared at me with great big eyes and open mouth. Okay, his sister. Okay, she was looking at him with open mouth, like that. Okay, and everybody in his family, they did not make a move and they were staring at him curiously. Across the open hearth, his face lit by flames, sat my father, leaning forward, hands outspread on his knees, his shoulders tense. I felt the sweat break out on my forehead. Okay, so here about his father, he was sitting and his face were bright by the flames of the fire. Okay, uh, and he was leaning forward, hands outspread on his knees, his shoulders tense, and also Christy Brown felt the sweating in his forehead. My mother came in from the pantry with a steaming pot in her hand. Okay, his mother came out of the kitchen with the steaming pot. She stopped midway between the table and the fire, feeling the tension flowing through the room. Okay, so she had stopped and she looked at the thing happened in the room. So what was the situation? Christy Brown held a piece of chalk in his left foot, and yeah, all other family members were looking at him curiously. That was the situation. She followed their stare and saw me in the corner. Her eyes looked from my face down to my foot with the chalk gripped between my toes. She put down the pot. Okay, that was the greatest surprise to his mother because Until then, he couldn't do anything. She also made several attempts to make him understand or do things of his own, but there were no result at all. Okay, in that condition, this is the greatest surprise to his mother that he had gripped a chalk in his between his toes. Okay, so she put down the pot. Okay, which she had brought from the kitchen. Then she crossed over me and knelt down beside me, as she had done so many times before. Okay, I'll show what to do with it, Grace, she said. Okay, so his mother crossed over him and knelt down beside him, and she said, I'll show what to do with it, Christ. She said very slowly and in a cute, choked way, her face flushed as if with some inner excitement. So, when people have some inner excitement or surprise feeling in them, their face will be flushed. Okay. Yes. Taking another piece of chalk from Mona, she hesitated, then very deliberately drew on the floor in front of me the single letter A. Okay, so his mother took another piece of chalk and had drawn the single letter A on the floor in front of Christy Brown and said, Copy that. Okay, copy that, she said, looking steadily at me. Copy it, Christy. Okay, so initially she had some hesitation, but then deliberately she had drawn the letter E on the floor and asked Christy Brown to copy that. I couldn't, but Christy Brown couldn't copy. Okay, so from this passage we could understand that about the mother's entry and how she had motivated him and how she had taught him to write the letter A. I looked about me, looked around the faces that were turned towards me, tense, excited faces that were at the moment frozen, immobile, eager, waiting for a miracle in their midst. Okay, they were eagerly waiting for the miracle to happen. Okay, the stillness was profound. The room was full of flame and shadow that danced before my eyes and lulled my taut nerves into a sort of waking sleep. Okay, there was a stillness, and the room was full of flames. Okay, the shadows. Okay, and uh, everybody were looking at him with some sort of eagerness in their eyes, and there were his taut nose into a sort of waking sleep. Okay, I could hear the sound of the water tap dripping in the pantry. So only when there is no sound at all, we could hear some so some sort of sounds from small things, some sort of sundry things like the dripping of the water tap. Okay, the loud ticking of the clock when if in our house there is no sound at all means we could hear the ticking of the clock. Okay, the loud ticking of the clock on the mantel shelf, and the soft hiss and crackle of the logs on the open hearth. Okay, in that fireplace, in that open hearth, the logs, small piece of wooden pieces were put and they were lit. Okay, they were fired, and the crackle of the logs were also heard. Okay, the soft hiss sound. Okay, when the wooden pieces were lit up, they were fired, we could hear the hiss sound out of them, and also the crackle of the logs also. I tried again. I put out my foot and made a wild jerking stab with the chalk, which produced a very crooked line and nothing more. Mother held the slate steady for me. Okay, so Christy Brown had tried and with a wild jerking stab with the chalk. Out of that, he had produced a very crooked line, only one crooked line, nothing more. But the mother held the slate steadily for him and said, "Try again, Chris." She whispered in my ear, "Again." Okay, so his mother encouraged him much to draw the letter A. Okay, so she had such kind of interest in him, and she was longing for such kind of the change to take place in the life of her son. Okay, so she said, "Try again, Chris," and she whispered in his ear again. I did. I stiffened my body and put my left foot out again. For the third time, I drew one side of the letter. I drew half the other side. Then the stick of chalk broke and I was left with a stump. Okay, that was happened. So he had stiffened his body and put his left foot out again, and he had drawn the one side of the letter E, and he drew the other side half half line. Okay, then what happened? The the yellow chalk broke at the end, and he was left with the stump. Okay, I wanted to fling it away and give up. Okay, he wanted to uh, uh, give up hope. He wanted to um, give up hope and throw the chalk away, and throw the chalk and stop the process there itself. But then I felt my mother's hand on my shoulder. Okay, this is the in an important thing happened. Okay, his mother had encouraged him by putting her hands over his shoulder. I tried once more. Okay, he had tried another time. Out went my foot. I shook, I sweated, and strained every muscle. See, students, for the person who is very perfect and who has control over his all organs in his body, doing any work is an ordinary thing. Okay, is a good thing. But for a person like Christy Brown, who had no control over his body, okay, who had control over his left foot alone, um, writing something, writing a letter is not an easy thing. Okay, he had uh, shook and sweated and strained every muscle. Okay, and his hands were so tightly clenched that my fingernails bit into the flesh. I set my teeth so hard that I nearly pierced my lower lip. Okay, so every muscle he had strained every muscle, and he had struggled a lot, and he set his teeth so hard that he was nearly piercing his lower lip. Everything in the room swam till the faces around me were mere patches of white, but I drew it, the letter E. So he had stiffened his body and strained every muscle, and he held it so tightly the clenched fingers, nails. Okay, the fingernails seems to bit into the flesh. Okay, he has strained everything, and at last he had drawn the letter A. Okay, there it was on the floor before me, a shaky with awkward wobbly sides and a very uneven center line. Okay, so how it was? It was some sort of a wobbly sides and uneven center line, but it was the letter A. Okay. Anyway, the children, while they were in their kindergarten studies, okay, when they start learning the language, almost all students would have written the uh, alphabet like that only. Okay, very uneven, awkward, wobbly sides. Okay, like that, Chris also had drawn that letter A. Uh, okay, I saw my mother's face for a moment, tears on her cheeks. Then my father stooped and hoisted me onto his shoulder. Okay, so that was the greatest situation. Okay, his mother's faith was rewarded. Okay, she had a good faith over him, which was rewarded on that moment only. Okay, so there were tears on her cheeks, and his father had stooped and hoisted him onto his shoulder. Okay, I had done it. It had started the thing that was to give my mind its chance of expressing itself. That what a great thing. Until that moment, Christy Brown couldn't express anything. Okay, there was no way to express anything what he think in his mind. But this is the first step towards expressing his thinking and ideas to outside world. Okay, true, I couldn't speak with my lips, but now I would speak through something more lasting than spoken words, which is the written words. Okay, so he couldn't speak with his lips, but he could speak through something more lasting, everlasting thing. Okay, the written words. Okay, even if we speak something that may change, but the words written will not change. Okay, that one letter scrawled on the floor with a broken bit of yellow chalk gripped between my toes. Okay, that was the one letter scrawled on the floor with a broken yellow chalk gripped in his toes. Okay, that was my road to a new world, my key to mental freedom. Okay, it was to provide a source of relaxation to the tense, taut thing that was I, which panted for expression behind a twisted mouth. Okay, so that was the road to success for him. Okay, so that was the his road to a new world, and also a key to his mental freedom. Okay, so from that moment he could learn many things, and he could express what he thinks, what he had felt to others. Okay, and it was to provide a source of relaxation to the tense thought thing that was I, which panted for expression behind a twisted mouth. Okay, so there were many more thoughts behind his twisted mouth. How to express them? Okay, this is the key for that. Okay, so this is the new road to success for him. Okay, so he could express what he think. Okay, and this is the key to a new world, the road to new world, and he could express his thoughts to others. Okay, so Christy Brown learned to write and draw with his left leg, the only part of his body over which he had some control. He took a keen interest in the arts and literature and went on to become a famous writer and painter. Okay, so from this we could understand that the persons with some disabilities, they would have an unquenchable thirst in them to express themselves to outer world. Okay, in this picture we could see how Christy Brown had drawn the letter A on the floor with the encouragement of his mother. Okay, so let's have a recap. The lesson opens with a note about Christie's siblings. They were his brothers Jim, Tony, and Paddy, and two sisters named Lily and Mona. So, in his um, family, he was the difficult one because he was affected by cerebral palsy, and he uh, had control over his left foot alone. His father was a bricklayer. A bricklayer is a person whose job is to build walls, houses, and other structures using bricks. His mother wanted to bridge the gap between Christy and his siblings, and she had struggled a lot to bring a change in Christy's life. He also understood his physical condition, his inability to do things of his own. Okay, so his mother struggled a lot mentally and physically to bring a change in his life because maintaining such kind of a child with the very less control over the body is not an easy thing. Okay, so his mother struggled a lot mentally and physically to bring a good change in Christy Brown's life. His mother had tried to make him understand the things given in the book and expected a positive reaction from Christy Brown. But Christy Brown did not give any reaction, which made his mother very sad. Okay, the relatives of Christy Brown had suggested an institution which would take care of such kind of children with disabilities, but his mother was not interested in that and she had much confidence in him. Christy Brown was able to do things only with his left foot toe, and his father took care of him in doing many things. He used to lie on his back in the kitchen or out in the garden. He was unable to communicate with others, separated. Okay, he was separated from others. It seems that there was a wall of glass stood between him and his siblings. He wanted to run and play with others but was unable to do that. But suddenly it happened so quickly, everything changed in a moment. His siblings, Paddy and Mona, were sitting close to him and writing songs, and Christy was watching them, and he was fascinated by the yellow chalk as if it was a gold stick. Suddenly, Christy reached out and took the chalk with his left foot, and he didn't know how his left foot reached out and took the chalk out of his sister's hand, and how did he hold the chalk, and what was the reaction of others. Okay, and Christy Brown tried his level best to write the letter A. Okay, but he couldn't write. Okay, as his mother came out of the kitchen, and she had noticed everything, and she had drawn the letter A in front of him and asked him to copy that. Okay, Christy Brown tried his level best to write the letter A, but he couldn't write it, and his mother had motivated him to write, and Christy Brown had got success in his attempt at last. He had drawn the letter E on the floor. Okay, so that is about Christy Brown. Okay, the letter A. Thank you, children. Have a nice day.